Ooh, that sugar sweet. You got what I need.
The iPhone 13 Pro is Apple's top-of-the-line iPhone for those who want the same size as the regular iPhone 13. Unlike last year's 12 Pro, the 13 Pro gets Apple's latest cameras, a new 120Hz display, and better battery life. I've had my iPhone 13 Pro for over the past month now, so I'm going to walk you through the top features that really stand out and some of my favorites, how this phone's camera system compares to the competition, any downsides I've encountered while using it, and then ultimately I'll walk you through who I think should upgrade or buy this phone. First up, let's talk cameras. The camera system on the 13 Pro is basically entirely new. You get a telephoto camera with a 2.8 aperture, a wide camera with an excellent 1.5 aperture, and a new sensor with larger pixels, increasing the main camera's low light performance considerably over the previous generation, and then a 1.8 aperture ultra wide. All of the cameras now have a night mode, which is used in conjunction with the 13 Pro's LiDAR sensor on the back, which unfortunately still has limited use cases, but we'll get to the Measure app in a second. So that's everything new with the camera hardware on this phone. Now there's also new software to talk about as well. The 13 Pro features Apple's latest photo processing software the company has branded Smart HDR4. It basically takes a bunch of different photos when you press the shutter button and combines them all in a way to give you the best looking result. And Smart HDR4 combined with the new camera tech has led to some of the best photos I've ever taken on an iPhone. Like this photo I took up at my family's farm. The camera system was able to perfectly reproduce how deep blue the sky was that day, or this stunning sunset. Notice how well the camera system retains the shape of the sun and how well it was able to capture the warm glow of the setting sun in the surrounding clouds. Now, when you're deciding between getting the 13 or the 13 Pro, with the cameras, yes, the 13 Pro does have that extra telephoto camera that gets you a 3x optical zoom. Keep in mind that there are other differences between the two phones' camera systems as well that you would want to consider. The wide-angle camera with its larger sensor on the Pro will give you better low light performance and depth of field. And the 13 Pro also has a new macro mode. By default, when you bring the camera close up to a subject, the camera system will switch to the ultra-wide camera for a macro shot, though you can change this automatic switching in settings. I've never been able to take this good of a macro shot with an iPhone before, and the distance to focus on a subject in macro mode with this iPhone is just insane. Now, one other new feature that has made the 13 Pro's camera system feel even better is Photographic Styles. This feature allows you to adjust how the iPhone's camera will process a photo before you take it. So different things in your photo like the sky or skin tones are processed differently from each other. Now, usually every year for the past few years, I've said something like this. The iPhone takes great photos, but I prefer the look of the photos from the Google Pixel just slightly more. Well, with this feature, Apple was basically like, oh, you want a richer contrast look to your photos? Here you go, here's rich contrast mode. Or you want your photos to look a little bit punchy and more vibrant like Samsung? Here you go, use the vibrant style. And best of all, you can actually adjust each photographic style to your liking. So you can adjust how much contrast you want to have in your images, or how cool or how warm you want your photos to look, giving the photos you take their own unique look. So even if someone is standing next to you at a party and you have the same exact iPhone and you're both taking a photo of the same group, the images you both take are going to look slightly different and unique when you use a customized photographic style, which is pretty cool. But do these photographic styles really produce images that look like they could have come from an S21 Ultra or Pixel 6 Pro? And in general, how good are Apple's photos and videos compared to the competition? In general, all three phones produce around the same level of quality with their photos, with corner cases where one phone will clearly produce a better image, but the main differentiation with them to me has been with their HDR processing and overall look when on auto mode. Like in previous years, this year I do find that Apple's 13 Pro camera system produces images that are vibrant with a warm tone and often look very bright, pushing up the highlights maybe a tad too much for my taste compared to the more contrasty and sometimes a bit more muted look that the Pixel 6 Pro's camera has. And the S21 Ultra's camera will often look even more vibrant than the iPhone's. So back to photographic styles for a second. Can this mode actually produce photos that look like they were taken on an S21 Ultra or Pixel 6 Pro? Not quite. While I do prefer a lot of the photos I get with rich contrast turned on, it doesn't necessarily match the images I get from the Pixel 6 Pro. This mode doesn't reduce every instance of the iPhone's camera pushing highlights a bit too far. And this mode will also not fix some choices the iPhone selfie camera makes, which looks occasionally really bad and way too bright compared to the Pixel 6 Pro. These two images were taken in the same exact lighting conditions at sunset, and the difference could not be more stark. I've also noticed that on occasion, Photographic Styles can make skin tones look slightly off. Like this photo, where the coloring of the person's skin is a bit off from what it does in real life, and also different from Apple's normal photo processing with no rich contrast photographic style turned on. Now, this doesn't happen too often in my experience, but when it does, it is noticeable, so it is something to watch out for when you use Photographic Styles. Next, let's talk video. The iPhone's video really shines, especially with the new camera system and the wide camera's low light performance. Now, one new feature Apple has been marketing quite heavily with its new phones is cinematic mode, which basically allows you to switch your focusing subject from the foreground to the background of an image, and then the camera will smoothly transition the focus on the new subject. This feature is a cool tech demo, but the way Apple has been marketing it is just overkill. Like, I don't think everyone's just gonna drop their cameras and use their iPhones to make movies tomorrow. There may be some uses for it on TikTok or social, but it's not really going to replace focus pulls that you can get on a traditional lens. And that's because when you use this mode and you focus in on something in the background, and then you want to pull your focus to a subject in the foreground, when you do that, the focus pull just looks slightly uneven and slightly off to the trained eye compared to what you would be used to with a traditional lens. When comparing it to the competition, the iPhone 13 Pro's video is top-notch, and while I'd consider the S21 and even the Pixel 6 Pro, there hasn't really been a scenario where I thought the iPhone's video was worse than the other two phones. It typically comes out looking just as good or better than the other two phones, so you can't really go wrong when choosing an iPhone for video quality. And with the new phone this year, you can shoot Apple ProRes, which records with less compression and faster decoding and encoding, giving you more flexibility when editing footage and doing color correction. However, keep in mind that you'll need at least 256 gigs of storage on your iPhone to get this feature. Another area where I'm impressed with the iPhone's camera system is with video mic quality. Here's an example.
All right, and this is what the front-facing camera of the iPhone 13 Pro looks like, being backlit by a sunset, and this is what that footage looks like for something like a vlog or just talking to your phone.
Notice it also did a superb job of keeping that sunset in the background exposed, as well as keeping my face lit, and that's all due to Apple's great video processing technology. Now, another thing I really like on this phone that surprised me a bit is its speakers. As far as phone speakers go, these are very, very good, and that's because you can hear quite a bit of detail in whatever you're listening to through these speakers. Now, obviously bass is going to be lacking, but it's not really expected here. And these speakers can also get very loud with no noticeable level of distortion, which is impressive. Next up, let's talk battery life. The battery life on my iPhone 13 Pro has been great and much improved over the battery life I was experiencing on my iPhone 12. While both were able to get me through the day, I've been seeing a battery of about 50% towards the end of the day with my iPhone 13 Pro compared to the 25 to 30% battery I was seeing at the end of the day with my iPhone 12. And for context, an average day of phone use for me includes activities like reading the news on my phone for an hour or two, checking messages from social, chat apps like Snap, taking photos on occasion, and then the apps that hog my battery the most are audio apps like Apple Music, Audible, and Google Podcasts, which I use about every day for a few hours. Now, another new feature that came with the 13 Pro as well as the 13 Pro Max that has improved almost everything I do on this phone within every single app is Apple's ProMotion display technology. ProMotion makes scrolling and animations feel smoother and faster and more pleasant to use thanks to the display's ability to go up to a 120 Hz refresh rate. It's one of those technologies that once you get it on one device, like on my iPad Pro, you want it on all of your other devices because it's so good. Now, one slight difference with the 13 Pro versus the 12 and even the 12 Pro from last year is that Apple made the 13 Pro heavier, weighing 204 grams compared to 189 grams for the 12 Pro and 163 grams for the 12. Apple used to be a company obsessed with making tech products thinner and lighter, but over the past couple of years, they haven't been afraid to make something heavier or thicker in order to put a larger battery in it, and that is the case with this year's iPhone 13 Pro. Now, if you upgrade from the 12 or a previous iPhone that isn't large, you will notice the weight difference, but it's something I've gotten used to over the past month, and it's not as big of a deal as I made it out to be last year. I did an entire video on the weight difference between the 12 Pro and the 12, and honestly, it is something you do get used to with these Pro models, at least in my experience. Now, the last thing that has made a huge impact on my use of the 13 Pro is, of course, iOS 15. Which isn't exclusive to the new iPhones, but it makes them feel a bit newer nonetheless. One surprise right out of the box was the magnifier app. This feature allows you to zoom in on things close up using the cameras, and it does take advantage of the 13 Pro's macro mode very well. Apparently iPhones have had this mode for a bit, but it was just buried in iOS settings. Now, another really cool thing that I've enjoyed playing around with the 13 Pro's LiDAR sensor is in the Measure app. You can actually take a person and it'll draw the height marker like, people used to do like next to the door frame. You can actually do that now virtually in AR in the Measure app thanks to the 13 Pro's LiDAR sensor. Focus modes are another new part of iOS 15 that I've used a lot with this phone. What they do is they block notifications and access to certain apps while you're doing certain activities like going to bed, driving, working, etc. You can also create your own custom focus modes as well, and the best part is they all sync across all of your Apple devices, which to me has been my favorite thing about this feature, and it fixes an annoyance that I had where you would put on Do Not Disturb on your iPhone only to get a barrage of text messages on your Mac or iPad. Spatial audio is also supported on this phone and now through more apps. I remember listening to a video on Twitter or Reddit with my AirPods Max on, which are great by the way, and we've done a review of those on the channel as well. I put my iPhone down on a table as the video was still playing, and then I turned my head with the AirPods Max still on to go look at something, and as I turned my head, the sound from the video shifted back towards the iPhone on the table. Thanks to Spatial Audio's head tracking feature, which works really well, and now with the newly released AirPods 3rd generation, so even more people can use this feature with their iPhone 13 Pro. Now, the last thing to briefly touch on with this device is the slight design tweaks that Apple made to the hardware. First, the new Sierra Blue color is less saturated than a true baby blue, and in person it looks very classy and elegant. Looking at the phone's front, you might notice that Apple decreased the size of the Face ID cutout, which helps separate the new iPhones from the old ones visually, but other than that, it doesn't make a huge difference. And when you look at the back of the phone, the new camera bump is much larger on the 13 Pro versus the iPhone 12 I upgraded from, and not just in its larger size, but how much more the cameras stick out from the phone, giving the phone a slight tilt when lying flat on a table, but you should be fine when you use your phone on a table unless you go out of your way to hit the top left corner for some reason. Now, the last thing I'd say in general that has really positively impacted me with using the iPhone 13 Pro is the Apple ecosystem of devices. iOS 15, like previous iOS releases, helps you integrate your iPhone with other Apple devices like AirPods, iPads, Macs, HomePod minis, the Apple TV, AirTags, and the Apple Watch, all of which I've now found myself an owner of. The iPhone serves as a gateway as well as a backbone to a lot of the integrations between Apple devices, allowing you to answer texts on your iPad, Mac, or Watch, seamlessly switch audio from your Mac to your iPad to your iPhone, and copy text on your iPhone and then Command V on a Mac or iPad to paste. Many of the Apple ecosystem integration features are just hard to replicate in any other tech product ecosystem, and even if you can replicate them, you're likely doing a lot of work to do that, whereas within the Apple ecosystem, everything just works seamlessly, it's easy and reliable most of the time. Heck, Even upgrading to the 13 Pro this year was just a downright easy and simple experience. Apple has one of the best setup processes for devices I've experienced because all you have to do is bring your old device close to your new one to start and transfer over your data, and even migrating my Apple Watch from my iPhone 12 to my 13 Pro was also easy and seamless, which in years past has not always been the case. Next, let's talk about downsides. Here are a couple of downsides I found when using the iPhone 13 Pro, and the first one is the Apple ecosystem. And you're going to be like, wait a minute, you just said that was a good thing. Yes, the Apple ecosystem in general is great when all of Apple's devices work seamlessly together, but the more you get into Apple's ecosystem, the harder it is to switch out of, and the more locked in you are as well, because you can't download apps outside of Apple's App Store on the iPhone. Fortnite is a pretty popular app, and as of this recording, due to legal disputes, Apple removed it from the App Store just like Google removed it from its Play Store. However, on any Android phone, you can still download Fortnite because Android is a more open phone OS, where on iOS you absolutely cannot do that unless you try and successfully jailbreak your iPhone. The other major downside with my iPhone 13 Pro that I've experienced is around phone call and text message or iMessage spam. Apple just hasn't really done anything in recent years to innovate on solutions that address these problems, especially when you compare the iPhone to phones like the Google Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, which can use the Google Assistant to screen potential spam calls before ringing your phone, stay on hold for you when contacting customer service, and they have advanced text message spam detection with their verified SMS feature. Apple just looks asleep at the wheel here, and the best they can do to make sure a spam caller doesn't actually ring your phone is a settings toggle that you can enable that will silence any call coming from someone that's not in your contacts, and it'll automatically send that call to voicemail. You can then block numbers that repeatedly call you without leaving a voicemail, or numbers or email addresses that send you a spam text or iMessage, but that's about it. It's certainly better than nothing, but it's an area I think Apple could put a lot more resources into. So those are all the downsides that I've encountered using my iPhone 13 Pro. Next, let's go through who I think this iPhone is actually for. To me, the iPhone 13 Pro is the iPhone to get this year unless you want a larger or smaller phone than you'd go with the 13 Pro Max or the 13 Mini. Otherwise, with its better camera system, better battery life, and higher screen refresh rate display, I do think it's worth picking up the 13 Pro over the 13. Now, if you have an iPhone from last year, shelling out $1,000 for the iPhone 13 Pro isn't necessary unless cost just really isn't a factor for you, or you get a really good trade-in deal on your current iPhone. For anyone with an iPhone 11 or older, I think the 13 Pro's display and camera upgrades, plus the new design and better battery life, will definitely make the iPhone experience feel fresh for you and a decent upgrade. Now, if you're an Android user and you've been tempted to switch to an iPhone for a while, this is one of the best generations of iPhones Apple has made, and it comes with very little compromises. And if you're interested, we have an upcoming video on the channel about switching from Android to iOS 1 year later. So if you want to see that video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. The iPhone 13 Pro starts at $999 US with 128 gigs of storage and comes in several colors, including Sierra Blue, Silver, Gold, and Graphite. I've left purchase links on the side of this video and in the description below if you're interested in learning more. And if you have any remaining questions about the 13 Pro or want to share your experience with this iPhone or other Apple products, leave a comment below, hit that thumbs up button if you liked this video and found it helpful, and subscribe to the channel to see more 1 month later reviews like this one on Apple and other tech products. For 6 months later, I'm Josh Tedder. Thanks for watching.